Okay, so in this part, what we're going to look at is the kingdom which is promised. We looked in part one at how people confuse the kingdom with what people think of as heaven. They think they go to heaven when they die. It's not actually what happens. Our souls go to Sheol. We will be resurrected from the dead into spiritual bodies, and those spiritual bodies are able to inherit the kingdom of Elohim. So we're given some pretty fantastic promises about the kingdom, some of the best promises in Scripture. Daniel 2 verse 44 says, "In the days of these kings, the Allah of heaven shall set up a kingdom which shall never be destroyed, nor the kingdom pass on to other people. It crushes and puts an end to all these kingdoms, and it will stand forever." So this is the statue that Nebuchadnezzar sees in his dream, which symbolizes all the kingdoms which will come to be on the earth. After all those kingdoms, Yehovah sets up his own kingdom. That's the promise that we have. In Revelation 11 verse 15 it says, "And the seventh angel sounded, and there came to be loud voices in the heaven, saying, The kingdom of this world has become the kingdom of our Master and of his Messiah, and he shall reign forever and ever." In Daniel 7:13-14 it says, "I was looking in the night visions and saw one like the son of Enosh." When it says the son of Enosh, sometimes we read of the son of Adam being translated as the son of man. The other word for man is Enosh as well as Ish. So this is the son of man. Saw one like the son of man coming with the clouds of heaven. And he came to the Ancient of Days, and they brought him near before him. And to him was given rulership and preciousness and a kingdom, that all peoples, nations, and languages should serve him. His rule is an everlasting rule, which shall not pass away, and his kingdom that which shall not be destroyed. And you'll notice here that it says, here in verse 14, "And to him was given rulership and preciousness and a kingdom, that all peoples and nations." Okay, and we're going to look as we go on at how the nations will come to serve Yeshua. The basic model being that Yeshua rules, and we rule and reign with him in the positions of authority in his kingdom. Zechariah 14 verse 9 says, "And Yehovah shall be king over all the earth. In that day there shall be one Yehovah," or it says, Echad Yehovah, "and his name one." In Isaiah 66 verse 8 it says, "Who has heard the like of this? Who has seen the like of these? Is a land brought forth in one day? Is a nation born at once? For as soon as Sion labored, she gave birth to her children." And many people will confuse this to be about the establishment of the state of Israel in 1948. But of course, that's not what this is talking about. This is talking about Yehovah's kingdom being set up on the earth. In 1 Corinthians 2 verse 9, it says, "But as it has been written, eye has not seen, nor an ear has not heard, rather, nor have entered into the heart of man what Elohim has prepared for those who love him." Pretty much the way I understand this is it saying you can't even imagine what it's going to be like. Or at least nobody up until the point at which this was written had ever imagined what it was going to be like. To know what the kingdom is going to be like, and to see a little bit of our relationship with the nations as the nation Yisrael dwelling in the land, we need to read 7 chapters of the book of Isaiah. They are chapters 60 through 66, and reading these chapters we will learn much about the kingdom that is to come. Isaiah 60 Verse 1 says, "Arise, shine, for your light has come, and the esteem of Yehovah has risen upon you. For look, darkness covers the earth, and thick darkness the peoples, but Yehovah arises over you, and his esteem is seen upon you." And this is talking about Yerushalayim, New Jerusalem. There's a distinction that Scripture draws between the nations and the nation, Yisrael. The peoples, Ha'amim, and the people of Yisrael, Ha'am Yisrael. So when it says thick darkness, the peoples, it's talking about the nations. But Yehovah arises over you, and his esteem is seen upon you. And the nations shall come to your light, and kings to the brightness of your rising. Lift up your eyes all around, and see, all of them have gathered. They have come to you. Your sons come from afar. Your daughters are supported on the side. So in the kingdom, it speaks of the nations coming to Yisrael, the nations serving Yisrael, in fact. And it is not in some kind of slave and master sort of situation. It seems that the people see Israel as a light to them. Remember, Elohim will be dwelling in their midst at the time Yeshua will be reigning, and we, his set apart ones, or his saints, to use older, more old school language, will be ruling and reigning with him over the nations. Then you shall see and be bright, and your heart shall throb and swell. For the wealth of the sea is turned to you, and the riches of the nations come to you. A stream of camels cover your land, the dromedaries of Midian and Ephah. All those from Shavah come bearing gold and incense, and most amazingly, they come proclaiming the praises of Yehovah. This is what it will be like when Yehovah has a kingdom on the earth. This is the reaction of the peoples, as opposed to the reaction of the peoples to his people at the moment, quite different. All the flocks of Kedar are gathered to you, the rams of Nevaioth serve you. They come up for acceptance on my altar, and I embellish my esteemed house. So you'll notice here that these animals, the flocks of Kedar, the rams of Nevaioth, are offered in Elohim's house. As we go through this, we're going to see that there is going to be a temple on the earth, not in New Jerusalem, but certainly there will be a temple in the land of Israel. And we see the Gentiles, the nations, bringing offerings to it. Who are these who fly like a cloud and drive doves to their windows? Because the coastlands wait for me, and the ships of Tarshish thirst to bring your sons from afar, their silver and their gold with them, to the name of Yehovah your Elohim, and to the set apart one of Yisrael, because he has adorned you. That is what Yehovah is to us. He is beautifying. And the sons of foreigners shall build your walls, and their kings serve you. For in my wrath I have stricken you, but in my delight I shall have compassion on you. And your gates shall be open continually. They are not shut day or night, to bring to you the wealth of the nations and their kings in procession. So the image that this gives is that the gates of Jerusalem will be open to a constant procession of the nations coming to honor Yehovah. For the nation and the kingdom that do not serve you shall perish, and those nations shall be utterly laid waste. So as I said, this isn't like the relationship that we would think of between master and slave, maybe closer to a biblical relationship like that, where there is caregiving, which is undertaken by the one who is in charge, but certainly not any kind of oppression or ruling with harshness. The esteem of Lebanon shall come to you, cypress, pine, and the box tree together, to embellish the place of my set apart place. And I shall make the place of my feet esteemed. Where is the place of his feet? Well, the heavens are his throne, and the earth is his footstool. He makes the place of his feet esteemed, and what we see here is very much like the way that Solomon, when silver was said to be of little value because of all the abundance of gold, as we see Solomon decking out Yehovah's set-apart place, it is kind of familiar with what we are reading of here, although I'm sure nothing in comparison. And the sons of those who afflicted you come bowing to you, and all those who despised you shall bow themselves at the soles of your feet, and they shall call you city of Yehovah, Sion of the set-apart one of Israel. Instead of you being forsaken and hated, so that no one passes through you, I shall make you an everlasting excellence, a joy of many generations. And you shall suck the milk of the nations, and shall suckle the breast of kings, and you shall know that I, Yehovah, your Saviour and your Redeemer, am the mighty of Yaakov. Instead of bronze I bring gold, and instead of iron I bring silver, and bronze instead of wood, which again is like Solomon's day, and iron instead of stones, and I shall make your officers peace, and your magistrates righteousness. So we will have right and just rulers in that day, which is all Yehovah ever wanted in the first place. Violence shall no longer be heard in your land, neither wasting nor ruin within your borders, and you shall call your walls deliverance and your gates praise. No longer is the sun your light by day, nor does the moon give light to you for brightness, but Yehovah shall be to you an everlasting light, and your Elohim your comeliness. No longer does your sun go down, and your moon withdraw itself, for Yehovah shall be your everlasting light, and the days of your mourning shall be ended. And your people, all of them righteous, shall inherit the earth forever, a branch of my planting, a work of my hands, to be adorned. So our turning back to Yehovah in righteousness and choosing him, he describes as us being a branch of his planting, or a work of his hands in doing that. So we can see that everything that has happened throughout history has all been Yehovah bringing himself a people in righteousness. The little shall become 1,000, and the small one a strong nation. I, Yehovah, shall hasten it in its time. Isaiah 61 says, the Spirit of the Master Yehovah is upon me, because Yehovah has anointed me to bring good news to the meek. He has sent me to bind up the brokenhearted, to proclaim release to the captives, and the opening of the prison to those who are bound. Something that Yeshua said was said about him, or at least was fulfilled in him. To proclaim the acceptable year of Yehovah and the day of vengeance of our Elohim, to comfort all who mourn. So there are two components that we're going to see as we go through this. We're going to see this immense abundance and this time of prosperity and peace that he brings on the earth to those whom he declares to be righteous. Also, we're going to see this theme of vengeance upon those who set themselves against him. To appoint unto those who mourn in Sion, to give them embellishment for ashes, the oil of joy for mourning, the garment of praise for the spirit of heaviness, and they shall be called trees of righteousness, a planting of Yehovah to be adorned. So just like Lazarus, when Abraham replies to the rich man, and he says, in life, basically Lazarus had it rough, but now he is comforted, and you are afflicted, you are suffering. So unto those who mourn, they're given the embellishment of ashes. Those who mourn are given the oil of joy. the garment of praise for those who have a spirit of heaviness, and they shall be called trees of righteousness, a planting of Yahovah again to be adorned. And they shall rebuild the old ruins, raise up the former wastes, and they shall restore the ruined cities, the wastes of many generations. And strangers shall stand and feed your flocks, and the sons of the foreigner be your ploughmen and your vine dressers. But you shall be called priests of Yahovah, servants of our Elohim, shall be said of you. You shall consume the strength of nations and boast in their esteem. And when we were looking at the resurrections of the dead, we looked at what it was to be a priest of Yahovah, a Cohen of Yahovah, one who kahans Yahovah, one who represents him. So a priest of Elohim, a servant of our Elohim. Instead of your shame and reproach, they rejoice a second time in their portion. Therefore they take possession a second time in their land. Everlasting joy is theirs. And this is when Yahovah's kingdom has come to be on the earth. You'll notice that it's a second time that they take up their portion. The first time being when Israel dwelt in the land originally. The second time being when Yeshua comes and sent out his angels to gather his people and lead them to the land. There is no intermediate second time when men have gathered themselves into the country known as Israel and have established for themselves a country. Okay, it's a second time. When we go back there at Yeshua's coming, that is the second time that Israel take up their portion, not the third time. For I, Yahovah, love justice. I hate robbery for a sending offering. In other words, I hate people giving the proceeds of robbery for a burnt offering. And I shall give their reward in truth and make an everlasting covenant with them. And their seed shall be known among the nations, and their offspring in the midst of the peoples. Which tells us one thing. We have seed and we have offspring during the time of the kingdom, and they will be known among the nations as the seed of the people of Yahovah. As it says here, all who see them shall acknowledge them, that they are the seed Yahovah has blessed. I greatly rejoice in Yahovah, my soul exalts in my Elohim, for he has put garments of deliverance on me. He has covered me with the robes of righteousness, as a bridegroom decks himself with ornaments, and as a bride adorns herself with jewels. For as the earth brings forth its bud, as the garden causes the seed to shoot up, so the Master Yahovah causes righteousness and praise to shoot up before all the nations. Isaiah 62. For Zion's sake I am not silent, and for Yerushalayim's sake I do not rest, until her righteousness goes forth as brightness, and her deliverance as a lamp that burns. And the nations shall see your righteousness, and all kings shall esteem, and you shall be called by a new name, which the mouth of Yahovah designates. And you shall be a crown of comeliness in the hand of Yahovah, and a royal headdress in the hand of your Elohim. You will be beautified before him, by following his ways. No longer are you called forsaken, and no longer is your land called deserted, but you shall be called Chefzivah, and your land married, for Yahovah shall delight in you, and your land be married. For as a young man marries a maiden, so shall your sons marry you, and as the bridegroom rejoices over the bride, so shall your Elohim rejoice over you. I have set watchmen on your walls, O Yerushalayim, all the day and all the night, continually, who are not silent. You who remember Yahovah, give yourselves no rest, and give him no rest, till he establishes, until he makes Yerushalayim a praise in the earth. And that I take to be a call to pray to Yahovah for those things to be accomplished. give him no rest till he establishes, until he makes Jerusalem a praise in the earth. Jehovah has sworn by his right hand, and by the arm of his strength, no more do I give your grain to be food for your enemies, nor do sons of the foreigner drink your new wine for which you have labored. But those gathering it shall eat it and praise Jehovah, and those collecting it shall drink it in my set-apart courts. So Jehovah says, as part of the curses, the people will plant and they will not reap of what they plant. Their enemies will reap of it. And he's saying here, he's calling an end to that curse and saying, no more will it be like that, but rather you will dwell in the land and you will enjoy the abundance of the land, as it should have been in the beginning, if only his people had listened to him. Pass through the gates, prepare the way for the people. Build up the highway, remove the stones, lift up a banner for the peoples. And again here we see a difference between the people and the peoples. Prepare, or lift up rather, a banner for the peoples. That's what his people will be for him during the kingdom. Where he says, pass through the gates, prepare the way for the people. That is Yisrael. Okay, the people of Yisrael. Build up the highway. And what do we see when the dead are raised? They come out of Sheol. The gates of Sheol will not prevail against them. They pass through the gates of Sheol. A way is prepared for them over the deep. The highway is prepared for them. We read of these things in Isaiah 35 and 51. So at the end, when the people in Abraham's bosom depart, it is just like when the people of Israel came out of Egypt and they passed through the Red Sea. They passed through the deep. That actually prophesies of what this is talking about, where they passed through the gates of Sheol. A way and a highway is made for them through the deep to meet Yeshua in the clouds. See, Jehovah has proclaimed to the end of the earth, say to the daughter of Zion, see, your deliverance has come. See, his reward is with him, and his work before him. And they shall be called the set-apart people, the redeemed of Jehovah, and you shall be called sought out, a city not forsaken. Isaiah 63 says, who is this coming from Edom, with garments of glowing colours from Botzerah, who is robed in splendour, striding forward in the greatness of his strength? It is I who speak in righteousness, mighty to save. And we know who this is. We read in Revelation 19 that this is Yeshua, and he is coming with his robe dipped in blood, and that's what we read of. Why is there red on your raiment, and your garments like one who treads in the winepress? I have trodden the winepress alone, and from the peoples no one was with me. And I trod them down in my displeasure, and I trampled them in my wrath. Their blood is sprinkled upon my garments, and I have defiled all my raiment. For a day of vengeance is in my heart, and the year of my redeemed is come. And I looked, but there was none helping, and I was astonished that there was none upholding. So my own arm saved for me, and my wrath upheld me. And I trod down the peoples in my displeasure, and I made them drunk in my wrath, and brought down their strength to the earth, or to earth. Let me recount the kindnesses of Jehovah, and the praises of Jehovah, according to all that Jehovah has done for us, and the great goodness towards the house of Israel, which he has done for them according to his compassion and according to his many kindnesses. And he said, they are my people, children who do not act falsely, and he became their Saviour. In all their distress he was distressed, and the angel of his presence saved them. In his love and in his compassion he redeemed them, and he lifted them up and carried them all the days of old. But they rebelled and grieved his set-apart spirit, and he turned against them as an enemy, and he fought against them. Then he remembered the days of old, Moshe, his people. Where is he who brought them up out of the sea with the shepherd of his flock? Where is he who put his set-apart spirit within him? And again, this idea of him bringing them up out of the sea, out of the deep, is or was a picture of what happens to us when we come from Abraham's bosom. Okay, there are prophecies that speak of the deep becoming hard and us being able to walk upon it. So he who brought them up out of the sea will be he who brings us up out of the sea at Yeshua's coming. Who led them by the right hand of Moshe with his comely arm, dividing the water before them to make for himself an everlasting name. Who led them through the deep. Like a horse in the wilderness, they did not stumble. As a beast goes down into the valley and the spirit of Yahovah causes him to rest, so you led your people to make yourself a comely name. Look down from heaven and see your set apart and comely dwelling. Where are your ardor and your might, the stirring of your inward parts and your compassion toward me? Are they withheld? For you are our Father, though Abraham does not know us, and Israel does not recognize us. You, O Yehovah, are our Father, our Redeemer. Your name is from of old. O Yehovah, why do you make us astray from your ways and harden our hearts from your fear? Turn back for the sake of your servants, the tribes of your inheritance. For a little while your set-apart people possessed it. Our adversaries have trodden down your set-apart place. We have become like those over whom you never ruled. Your name is not called on them. Isaiah 64. Oh, that you would tear the heavens open. Come down, that mountains shall shake before you. As when fire burns twigs, as fire makes water boil, to make your name known to your adversaries, so that nations tremble before you. When you did awesome matters which we did not expect, you came down, mountains did shake before you. Since the beginning of the ages, they have not heard nor perceived by the ear, nor has the eye seen any Elohim besides you, who acts for those who wait for him. You shall meet him who rejoices and does righteousness, who remembers you in your ways. See, you were wroth when we sinned in them a long time, and should we be saved? And all of us have become as one unclean, and all our righteousnesses are as soiled rags, and all of us fade like a leaf, and our iniquities like the wind have taken us away. And there is no one who calls on your name, who stirs himself up to be strengthened in you. For you have hidden your face from us, and have consumed us because of our iniquities. And now, O Yehovah, you are our Father, we are the clay, and you are our potter, and we are all the work of your hand. Do not be wroth, O Yehovah, nor remember iniquity forever. See, please look, all of us are your people. Your set-apart cities have become a wilderness. Sion has become a wilderness, Jerusalem a waste. Our set-apart and comely house, where our fathers praised you, has been burned up with fire, and all that we treasure has become a ruin. In view of all this, would you restrain yourself, O Yehovah? Would you keep silent and afflict us beyond measure? Isaiah 65. I have let myself be inquired of, not by those who asked. I was found, not by those who sought me. I said, here I am, to a nation not calling on my name. I have held out my hands all day long to a stubborn people who walk in a way that is not good, after their own thoughts. The people who provoke me continually to my face, who slaughter in gardens and burn incense on altars of brick, who sit among the burial sites and spend the night in secret places, who eat the flesh of pigs, and the broth of unclean meats is in their pots. So his people have become unto him people who ignore his teaching and instruction. He said to not be near burial sites as they make one unclean, to not eat the flesh of swines as they are unclean animals, to not eat unclean meats in your pots. They slaughter in the gardens, they burn incense on altars of brick. In other words, they don't give offerings where he said to in his temple. They do it all over the land. The altars of brick are directly against his Torah as well. He says not to make an altar of unhewn, rather to make his altar of unhewn stone, not to make it of hewn stone like bricks. But man has forgotten the way that Yahovah said is good to walk. Who say, keep to yourself, do not come near me, for I am set apart from you. These are smoke in my nostrils, a fire that burns all day. See, it is written before me, I am not silent, but shall repay, and I shall repay into their bosom. You see, where it says there, who say, keep to yourself, I am set apart from you, that is commonly translated, I am holier than thou. Okay, and what that actually means is his people are saying, we don't want any of your instructions, we are holy from you. Just like the people who say, oh no, we've been made holy by Yeshua's blood now, so we don't have to follow the Torah anymore. They're in complete confusion about the fact that this is at the time of the end when Yehovah is about to return. He is calling his people out for having become like this, for saying, oh no, we are set apart from you. Do not come near to us. It is written before me, I am not silent, but shall repay, and I shall repay into their bosom. So he will bring vengeance upon such a people, and we'll see that as we continue. This is right at the point where he returns. Your iniquities and the iniquities of your fathers together, said Yahovah, who burned incense on the mountains and reproached me on the hills, and I shall measure their former work into their bosom. Thus said Yahovah, as the new wine is found in the cluster, and one shall say, do not destroy it, for there is blessing in it, so I do for my servant's sake, not to destroy them all. So what he's saying is, just as someone might say, in that cluster of grapes, there is the potential to make new wine. So don't destroy the cluster. He sees his people in the same way. He will not destroy his people once and for all, because there is potential within them. There is a remnant that is within them. Verse 9 says, and I shall bring forth a seed from Yaakov and from Yehudah, an heir of my mountains. That would be Yeshua. And my chosen one shall inherit it, and my servants dwell there. And Sharon shall be a fold of flocks, and the valley of Achor a place for herds to lie down, for my people who have sought me. But you are those who forsake Yehovah, who forget my set-apart mountain, who prepare a table for God, and who fill a drink offering for many. Okay, and regrettably, this is how his people have become. They have turned to pagan ways to worship him. They've turned to the worship of Ishtar, the worship of him on Christmas, which is a pagan festival. So he reproaches them here, and he says, you've forgotten my set-apart mountain, you've forgotten my Torah, which goes forth from the land. You have done your own thing. You've gone after these pagan gods. You prepared the table for God. You filled the drink offering for many, these pagan gods. And I shall allot you to the sword, and let you all bow down to the slaughter, because I called and you did not answer. I spoke and you did not hear. You did evil before my eyes and chose that in which I did not delight. So his people today will say, well, Jesus made all food clean. Actually, that's an addition to the scriptures by the scribes. And it says all food, whereas unclean meat is not food and never has been. Or they'll point to Acts 10, what Peter said, which was not about food. If you read Acts 10 and Acts 11, what it's about is not calling the Gentiles whom Yehovah has cleansed, not calling them unclean. He never cleansed unclean meat. So you can't call unclean that which he has called clean, because he never called it clean. But this misunderstanding is pervasive among his people. So he says to them, I will allot you to the sword. Great swaths of his people are expecting to be raptured away when a time of difficulty comes. But what he says is, I will not destroy my people entirely, like I would not destroy the cluster because of the potential of the new wine inside. But those who go after wickedness, those who choose that which in which he did not delight, those he will give to the sword. He will let them all bow down to the slaughter, okay, which may well take the form of them losing their heads because they are not prepared to worship the image of the beast, and thereby they prove their faith. But they will not be those whom Yehovah protects, those of the church of Philadelphia, for example, those who have guarded his word, those who are the remnant who keep his Torah and don't listen to ear-tickly things about the Torah having been done away with, or Paul's words being twisted to support anomia, to support lawlessness. Those people, he allots them to the sword. Therefore, thus said the Master Yehovah, see my servants eat, but you hunger. See my servants drink, but you thirst. See my servants rejoice, but you are put to shame. See my servants sing for joy of heart, but you cry for sorrow of heart, and wail for the breaking of spirit. And you shall leave your name as a curse to my chosen, for the Master Yehovah shall put you to death, and call his servants by another name. So you don't want to be in that group. Okay, many are called, but few are chosen. Of those who are called are going to be those who are in this group, who eat the flesh of swines, who are, as Yehovah describes, as smoke in his nostrils. That group who will be given over to the sword, their name will be as a curse to the chosen, and he will call his servants, the chosen, by another name. A name, of course, not only being the thing by which you are called, but also the thing by which you are known, your name, your character. So that he who blesses himself in the earth does bless himself in the Elohim of truth. And he who swears in the earth does swear by the Elohim of truth, because the former distresses shall be forgotten, and because they shall be hidden from my eyes. So there will be a time of distress before all this happens. Those who do not follow his Torah, those who are eating the flesh of swines and all the rest of the things that he listed, they will be given over to the sword, for example, as that time of distress. But that time of distress shall be forgotten, because they shall be hidden from my eyes. For look, I am creating new heavens and a new earth, and the former shall not be remembered, nor come to heart. But be glad and rejoice forever in what I create. For look, I create Jerusalem a rejoicing, and her people a joy. And I shall rejoice in Jerusalem, and shall joy in my people, and let the voice of weeping no more be heard in her, nor the voice of crying. No more is an infant from there going to live but a few days, nor an old man who does not complete his days. For the youth dies 100 years old, but the sinner being 100 years old shall be lightly esteemed. So a couple of interesting points there. Firstly, we see that people are going to live much longer, but we also see that there will be sinners in the kingdom. People are still going to have free will to choose to sin or not to sin, because the nations are still going to be present on the earth during the time of the kingdom, when we will rule and reign over the nations. And they shall build houses and inhabit them, and plant vineyards and eat their fruit. They shall not build and another inhabit, they shall not plant and another eat. For the days of my people are going to be as the days of a tree, and my chosen ones outlive the work of their hands. So no longer are we going to create things that will endure beyond our lifetimes. Okay, 100 years old is well beyond the lifetime of most people today. But here, his people are going to outlive the work of their hands. They will have life eternal. They shall not labor in vain and bring forth children for trouble. So again, they bring forth children, for they are the seed of the blessed of Yehovah, and their offspring is with them. Okay, so again, their offspring, their children. And it shall be that before they call, I answer, and while they are still speaking, I hear. Wolf and lamb feed together, a lion eats straw as an ox, and dust is the snake's food. They shall do no evil, nor destroy in all my set-apart mountains, said Yehovah. Isaiah 66 says, Thus said Yehovah, the heavens are my throne, and the earth is my footstool. Where is this house that you build for me, and where is the place of my rest? And all these my hand has made, and all these that exist, declares Yehovah. Yet to such a one I look, on him who is poor and bruised of spirit, and who trembles at my word. But whoever slays the bull strikes a man, whoever slaughters the lamb breaks a dog's neck, whoever brings a grain offering, pig's blood, whoever burns incense blesses an idol. Indeed, they have chosen their own ways, and their soul delights in their abominations. So Yehovah speaks elsewhere of hating the festivals that people do when it is also accompanied by disobedience. And this is what he is speaking of here. His people have chosen their own ways. Yes, they might come along to a church meeting and they might sing songs to him or whatever it is, but to him it is as an abomination, because those people have not chosen his way, his teaching and instruction. Rather, they've chosen their own ways. Their soul delights in their abominations. He says that eating the flesh of swine, that eating prawns and octopus and crab and squid, all of that is abomination. That's how he defines it, and yet his people have chosen those things in which he did not delight, and they delight in their abominations. I shall also choose their punishments and bring fears on them, because I called and no one answered. I spoke and they did not hear, and they did evil before my eyes, and chose what was displeasing to me. So he's given us all of this information in his word, that he thinks all of these things are abomination, all those things that he thinks of as evil, and yet man always finds a way to come to some kind of conclusion about what his word says, that, oh no, this has been done away with, or this has been changed. They chose what is displeasing to him. They did evil before his eyes. He said, this is good, this is evil, and they chose what was evil. Hear the word of Yehovah, you who tremble at his word. Your brothers who hate you, who cast you out for my name's sake, said, "Let Yehovah be esteemed, so that we see your joy," but they are put to shame. Okay, so if you are somebody who rejoices and delights in Yehovah's law, and you have been put out of meetings of, in inverted commas, Christians, because of his name and what he says is right, this verse is for you. A roaring sound from the city, a voice from the temple, the voice of Yehovah repaying his enemies, not his servants, his enemies. Before she labored, she gave birth. Before a pain came to her, she was delivered of a male child. Who has heard the like of this? Who has seen the like of these? Is a land brought forth in one day? Is a nation born at once? For as soon as Sion labored, she gave birth to her children. Shall I bring to birth and not give delivery, says Yehovah? Shall I who give delivery, restrain birth, said your Elohim? Rejoice with Jerusalem, and be glad with her, all you who love her. Rejoice greatly with her, all you who mourn for her, so that you feed and shall be satisfied with the breast of her comforts, so that you drink deeply and shall delight yourselves in her overflowing esteem. For thus said Yehovah, see, I am extending peace to her like a river, and the esteem of the nations like a flowing stream. And you shall feed, you shall be carried on the side, and be fondled on her knees. As one whom his mother comforts, so I comfort you. And in Jerusalem you are comforted. And you shall see, and your heart shall rejoice, and your bones flourish as tender grass. And the hand of Yehovah shall be known to his servants, and his displeasure to his enemies. So just like there are those who are comforted in the depths of the earth in Abraham's bosom, they are the ones who will be raised again in spiritual bodies, and they will inherit the land of Israel, and they will be a people as Yehovah had envisioned in the first place. And he says, you will be as one whom his mother comforts. So just as they are comforted in the earth, so they will be comforted in Jerusalem. For look, Yehovah comes with fire, and with his chariots like a whirlwind, to render his displeasure with burning, and his rebuke with flames of fire. For by fire and by a sword Yehovah shall judge all flesh, and the slain of Yehovah shall be many. Those who set themselves apart and cleanse themselves at the gardens after one in the midst, eating flesh of pigs, and the abomination and the mouse are snatched away together, declares Yehovah. And I, because of their works and their imaginations, am coming to gather all nations and tongues, and they shall come and see my esteem. And I shall set a sign among them, and I shall send some of those who escape to the nations, Tarshish and Pool and Lud, who draw the bow, and Taval and Yavan, the coastlands of far off, who have not heard my report, nor seen my esteem, and they shall declare my esteem among the nations. And they shall bring all your brothers as an offering to Yehovah out of all the nations, on horses and in chariots and in litters, on mules and on camels, to my set apart mountain Jerusalem, declares Yehovah, as the children of Israel bring an offering in a clean vessel into the house of Yehovah. So this is a persistent theme throughout this. During the kingdom, the time of the kingdom, when the righteous will rule and reign on the earth, they will be a light to the nations, and the nations will bring an offering to the house of Yehovah. And from them too I shall take for priests, for Levites, declares Yehovah. For as the new heavens and the new earth that I make stand before me, declares Yehovah, so your seed and your name shall stand. And it shall be that from Chodesh to Chodesh, and from Sabbath to Sabbath, all flesh shall come to worship before me, declares Yehovah. And they shall go forth and look upon the corpses of the men who have transgressed against me, for their worm shall not die, and their fire not be quenched, and they shall be repulsive to all flesh. Okay, so that is the kingdom, that is the relationship between the nation of Israel and the nations, the Goyim, the Gentiles, as we might say. In Zechariah 8:3-8 it says, Thus said Jehovah, I shall return to Zion, and I shall dwell in the midst of Jerusalem, and Jerusalem shall be called City of Truth, and the mountain of Jehovah Sabaoth, the set-apart mountain. Thus said Jehovah Sabaoth, Again, old men and old women shall dwell in the streets of Jerusalem, each one with his staff in his hand, because of great age. And the streets of the city shall be filled with boys and girls playing in its streets. Thus said Jehovah Sabaoth, If it is marvelous in the eyes of the remnant of this people in these days, should it also be marvelous in my eyes, declares Jehovah Sabaoth. Thus said Jehovah Sabaoth, See, I am saving my people from the land of the sunrise and from the land of the sunset. And I shall bring them back, and they shall dwell in the midst of Jerusalem, and they shall be my people, and I shall be their Elohim, in truth and in righteousness. And as I've said, that is all that Jehovah desired from the beginning. Luke 22:29-30 says, And I covenant for you as my Father covenanted for me, a kingdom, to eat and drink at my table in my kingdom, and to sit on thrones judging the 12 tribes of Israel. And of course he is talking to his disciples here, but we hear something similar said of us. 1 Corinthians 6:2 says, Do you not know that the set-apart one shall judge the world? And if the world is judged by you, are you unworthy to judge the smallest matters? And I think what people have in mind here is that the world is to be judged by us, kind of like in the actual judgment which will be done by Yeshua, as if we will sit and judge them. But that's not what this means. Okay, we will rule and reign with Messiah. Just as in the Torah there were officers and there were judges, it will be the same in the time of the kingdom. We will judge the world in that we will be those people, those ranks amongst the world. We will rule and reign with Messiah, in other words. Daniel 7:27 says, And the kingdom and the rulership and the greatness of the kingdoms under all the heavens shall be given to the people, the set-apart ones of the Most High. His kingdom is an everlasting kingdom, and all rulerships shall serve and obey him. As it says, the greatness of the kingdoms, that is the kingdoms of the world, shall be given to the people, Ha-Am, the set-apart ones, the chosen. They will rule and reign with Messiah in the kingdom. So that is what is true of the nation of Israel, his chosen, during the time of the kingdom. Zechariah 14:16-19 tells us, it details a very interesting event, which will perhaps tell us something of the nations. Now, I think most of the time people read this and they think that this happens before Yeshua comes back, but I think that this happens during the time that we were looking at, after the 1,000 years has ended, when all the nations come and surround Jerusalem. It certainly makes more sense to me. Verse 16 says, And it shall be that all who are left from all the nations which came up against Jerusalem shall go up from year to year to bow themselves to the King Jehovah Sabaoth, and to celebrate the festival of Sukkot. And it shall be that if any one of the clans of the earth does not come up to Jerusalem to bow himself to the king, Yehovah Sabaoth, on them there is to be no rain. And if the clan of Mitzrayim, the clan of Egypt, does not come up and enter in, then there is no rain. On them is the plague with which Yehovah plagues the nations who do not come up to celebrate the festival of Sukkot, that there would be no rain. This is the punishment of Mitzrayim, and the punishment of all the nations that do not come up to celebrate the festival of Sukkot. So that I see as happening at the end of the 1,000 years. After Hasatan has led the nations astray, they are brought into obedience to Yehovah. They have to come up and celebrate Sukkot. That may be, it may not be. It may also explain the events of Isaiah 19 or put them into a timeline. And in that day 5 cities in the land of Mitzrayim shall speak the language of Canaan and swear by Yehovah Sabaoth. One is called the city of destruction. In that day an altar to Yehovah shall be in the midst of the land of Egypt, and a standing column to Yehovah at its border. And it shall be for a sign and for a witness to Yehovah Sabaoth in the land of Egypt, when they cry to Yehovah because of the oppressors. He sends them a Saviour and an Elohim, and shall deliver them. And Yehovah shall be known to Mitzrayim, and the Mitzrites shall know Yehovah in that day, and make sacrifice and meal offering, and shall make a vow to Yehovah and pay it. And Yehovah shall smite Mitzrayim, smite it and heal it, and they shall turn to Yehovah, and he shall hear them and heal them. In that day there shall be a highway from Mitzrayim to Ashur, and Ashur shall come into Mitzrayim, and Mitzrayim into Ashur. That's Egypt and Assyria. And Egypt shall serve with Assyria. In that day Israel shall be one of three, with Mitzrayim and Ashur, even a blessing in the midst of the earth, whom Yehovah Sabaoth shall bless, saying, Blessed is Mitzrayim my people, and Ashur the work of my hands, and Israel my inheritance. So, if that doesn't happen after the 1,000 years, it happens in the kingdom when Israel are a light to the nations. But it is an interesting event that Yehovah would refer not only to Israel as his people, but also Egypt, my people, and he would refer not only to Israel as the work of his hands, but also Assyria, the work of his hands, because he brings all of the people to him, all of these people. Matthew 25:31-46 gives us some insight into perhaps where the nations come from during the kingdom. It says, And when the son of Adam comes in his esteem, and all the set apart angels with him, then he shall sit on the throne of his esteem, and all the nations shall be gathered before him, and he shall separate them one from another, as a shepherd separates his sheep from the goats. And he shall set the sheep on his right hand, but the goats on the left. Then the king shall say to those on his right hand, Come, you blessed of my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. So, in somewhat of a departure from traditional Christian doctrine, we see the nations being brought before him here. Not only the brethren, but also the nations. The nations, it is said of them that the kingdom was also prepared for them from the foundation of the world, because Yehovah knew how they would act. They're not believers in Yeshua, but they are judged based on how they treat the believers in Yeshua. For I was hungry, and you gave me food. I was thirsty, and you gave me drink. I was a stranger, and you took me in. I was naked and you clothed me. I was sick and you visited me. I was in prison and you came to me. Then the righteous shall answer him, saying, Master, when did we see you hungry and we fed you, or thirsty and we gave you to drink? Notice that those of the nations who acted in this way are described as the righteous. And when did we see you a stranger and took you in, or naked and we clothed you? And when did we see you sick or in prison and came to you? And the king shall answer and say to them, Truly I say to you, insofar as you did it to one of these, the least of these my brothers, you did it to me. So it is how they treat his body. He says, you did it to me. He shall then also say to those on the left hand, Go away from me, accursed ones, into the everlasting fire prepared for the devil and his angels. For I was hungry and you gave me no food. I was thirsty and you gave me no drink. I was a stranger and you did not take me in. Was naked and you did not clothe me. Sick and in prison and you did not visit me. Then they shall also answer him, saying, Master, when did we see you hungry or thirsty, or a stranger, or naked, or sick, or in prison, and did not serve you? Then he shall say to them, saying, Truly I say to you, insofar as you did not do it to one of the least of these, you did it not to me. So Yeshua addresses them here, and he divides the nations, the righteous, from those who have acted wickedly. So these people are judged by their works. They're not believers in Yeshua, and yet they enter into the kingdom if he deems them to be righteous. So he must declare them right. He must justify them based upon their works. And these shall go away into everlasting punishment, but the righteous into everlasting life. So that's how the nations are judged when Yeshua comes in his esteem. Isaiah 66:22-23 says, For as the new heavens and the new earth that I make stand before me, declares Jehovah, so your seed and your name shall stand. And it shall be that from Chodesh to Chodesh and from Sabbath to Sabbath, all flesh shall come to worship before me, declares Yehovah. And that would seem to include the nations who are mentioned as being in the kingdom in Isaiah 60 to 66. In Isaiah 2, we learn something else about these nations at that time. Verse 2 says, And it shall be in the latter days that the mountain of the house of Yehovah is established on the top of the mountains, and shall be exalted above the hills, and all nations shall flow to it. And many people shall come and say, Come and let us go up to the mountain of Yehovah, and to the house of the Elohim of Yaakov, and let him teach us his ways, and let us walk in his paths. For out of Zion comes forth the Torah and the word of Yehovah from Jerusalem. Okay, so here you see many peoples, many Amim, not Ha'am, the people of Israel. Many peoples will come and they will say, Let him teach us his ways. Okay, and what they will be learning is, out of Zion comes forth the Torah and the word of Yehovah. So the nations, as we read of later in the book of Isaiah, they will come to Israel as a light to them. And he shall judge between the nations. So again, the nations, and shall reprove many peoples. Okay, so just like we see with the sheep and the goats, he shall judge between the nations, shall reprove many peoples, and they shall beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither teach battle anymore. So it will be generally a time of peace. Ezekiel 47 verse 12 says, by the bank of the stream on both sides grow all kinds of trees used for food, whose leaves do not wither and fruit do not fail. They bear fruit every chodesh, because their water flows from the set apart place, and their fruit shall be for food, and their leaves for healing. We get more detail about that in Revelation 22. Verse 1 says, and he showed me a river of water of life, clear as crystal, coming from the throne of Elohim and of the Lamb. In the middle of its street, and on either side of the river, was the tree of life, which bore 12 fruits, each tree yielding fruit every month. And the leaves of the tree doesn't just say were for healing, it says they were for the healing of the nations. So again, the nations are mentioned as being a part of the kingdom. And with that in mind, let's read Revelation 21 and 22, because just like Isaiah 60 to 66, they tell us much detail about the kingdom. Revelation 21. And I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the former heaven and the former earth had passed away, and the sea is no more. Which statement makes more sense to us now after the first part of this series. And I, Yochanan, saw the set apart city, New Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from Elohim, prepared as a bride adorned for her husband. And I heard a loud voice from heaven saying, see, the tabernacle of Elohim is with men, and he shall dwell with them, and they shall be his people, and Elohim himself shall be with them, and be their Elohim. And Elohim shall wipe away every tear from their eyes. All of this shall be familiar to us from Isaiah. And there shall be no more death, nor mourning, nor crying, and there shall be no more pain, for the former matters have passed away. And he who was sitting on the throne said, see, I make all matters new. And he said to me, write, for these words are trustworthy and true. And he said to me, it is done. I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. To the one who thirsts I shall give the fountain of the water of life without payment. The one who overcomes shall inherit all this, and I shall be his Elohim, and he shall be my son. But as for the cowardly and untrustworthy and abominable and murderers and those who fornicate and sorcerers and idolaters and all the false, their part is in the lake which burns with fire and sulfur, which is the second death. And one of the 7 angels who held the 7 bowls filled with the last 7 plagues came to me and spoke with me, saying, come, I shall show you the bride, the Lamb's wife. And he carried me away in the spirit to a great and high mountain, and showed me the great city, the set apart Jerusalem, descending out of the heaven from Elohim, having the esteem of Elohim, and her light was a most precious stone. Her light was like a most precious stone, like a jasper stone, clear as crystal. And having a great and high wall, having 12 gates, and at the gates 12 angels, and names written on them, which are those of the 12 tribes of the children of Israel. 3 gates on the east, 3 gates on the north, 3 gates on the south, and 3 gates on the west. And the wall of the city had 12 foundations, and on them were the names of the 12 apostles of the Lamb. And he who spoke with me had a golden measuring rod to measure the city and its gates and its wall. And the city lies 4-cornered, and its length is as great as its breadth. And he measured the city with the rod 12,000 stadia. The length and the breadth and the height of it are equal. And he measured its wall 144 cubits, according to the measure of a man. that is, of an angel. And the structure of the wall was jasper, and the city was clean gold like clear glass. And the foundations of the wall of the city were adorned with all kinds of precious stones. The first foundation jasper, the second sapphire, the third agate, the fourth emerald, the fifth sardonyx, the sixth ruby, the seventh chrysolite, the eighth beryl, the ninth topaz, the 10th chrysoprase, the 11th jacinth, and the 12th amethyst. And the 12 gates were 12 pearls. Each one of the gates was a single pearl, and the street of the city was clean gold like transparent glass. And I saw no temple in it, for Jehovah El Shaddai is its temple and the Lamb. And this is something which causes confusion to people, because in Ezekiel 40 verse 2 it says, "In visions of Elohim he brought me into the land of Israel and set me on a very high mountain, and upon it toward the south was as the structure of a city." And here a temple is revealed to Ezekiel, and people, because of the similarity I think between what we're reading in Revelation and what it says in Ezekiel about the angel doing the measuring, I think people get confused about the New Jerusalem and the temple which is revealed to Ezekiel. Here we see that Ezekiel is on a very high mountain, and there was a city to the south. Doesn't say it's New Jerusalem, it just says a city. So this temple which Ezekiel sees is not in the New Jerusalem. So when it says here in verse 22, "I saw no temple in it, for Jehovah El Shaddai is its temple and the Lamb," it is talking about in New Jerusalem. It doesn't contradict Ezekiel 40, which talks of a temple on a very high mountain. And we see in Isaiah that all of the nations are bringing offerings to Jehovah. They're just not bringing them to New Jerusalem, to a temple in New Jerusalem. Verse 23 says, "And the city had no need of the sun, nor of the moon to shine in it, for the esteem of Elohim lightened it, and the Lamb is its lamp. And the nations of those who are saved shall walk in its light, and the kings of the earth bring their esteem into it. And its gates shall not be shut at all by day, for night shall not be there. And they shall bring the esteem and the appreciation of the nations into it." Their offerings, however, are given at the temple detailed in Ezekiel 40 through 48. "And they shall by no means enter into it whatever is unclean, neither anyone doing abomination and falsehood, but only those who are written in the Lamb's book of life." Revelation 22 says, "And he showed me a river of the water of life, clear as crystal, coming from the throne of Elohim and of the Lamb. In the middle of its street and on either side of the river was the tree of life, which bore 12 fruits, each tree yielding its fruit every month. And the leaves of the tree were for the healing of the nations. And no longer shall there be any curse, and the throne of Elohim and of the Lamb shall be in it, and his servants shall serve him. And they shall see his face, and his name shall be upon their foreheads. And night shall be no more, and they shall have no need of a lamp, or the light of the sun, because Jehovah Elohim shall give them light, and they shall reign forever and ever." And he said to me, "These words are trustworthy and true, and Jehovah Elohim of the set-apart prophets has sent his angels to show his servants what has to take place with speed. See, I am coming speedily. Blessed is he who guards the words of the prophecy of this book." And I, Yochanan, saw and heard these matters, and when I heard and saw, I fell down to worship before the feet of the angel who showed me these matters. And he said to me, See, do not, for I am your fellow servant, and of your brothers the prophets, and of those who are guarding the words of this book. Worship Elohim. Which is interesting, because when he falls down and worships Yeshua, towards the beginning of Revelation, Yeshua says no such thing to him. And he said to me, Do not seal the words of the prophecy of this book, because the time is near. He who does wrong, let him do more wrong. He who is filthy, let him be more filthy. He who is righteous, let him be more righteous. He who is set apart, let him be more set apart. And see, I'm coming speedily, and my reward is with me, to give to each according to his work. I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end, the first and the last. Blessed are those doing his commands, so that the authority shall be theirs unto the tree of life, and to enter through the gates into the city. But outside are the dogs, and sorcerers, and those who whore, and the murderers, and the idolaters, and all who love and do falsehood. And actually, all of those terms are terms used for people who do not keep Torah in the rest of the scriptures. So we have the set apart people who are in New Jerusalem, the nation Israel, and outside the gates of the New Jerusalem are the nations, and they do bring things into New Jerusalem, but they themselves are outside. Verse 16 says, I, Yeshua, have sent my angels to witness to you these matters in the assemblies. I am the root and the offspring of David, the bright morning star. And the Spirit and the bride say, Come. And he who hears, let him say, Come. And he who thirsts, come. And he who desires it, take the water of life without paying. For I witness to everyone hearing the words of the prophecy of this book. If anyone adds to them, Elohim shall add to him the plagues that are written in this book. And if anyone takes away from the words of this book, of the book of this prophecy, Elohim shall take away his part from the book of life, which gave me pause for thought as I was highlighting certain words out of the paragraphs and not others. But I've not taken away from the words of the book. And out of the set apart city which are written in this book. He that bears witness of these matters says, Yes, I am coming speedily. Amen. Yes, come, Master Yeshua. And we know to Yehovah 1,000 years is as but a day. So he speaks here of coming speedily, but not speedily to our understanding, perhaps. The favor of our Master Yeshua Messiah be with the set apart ones. Amen. Okay, so we have a prophecy there given by the mouth of Yochanan, John, the disciple whom Yeshua loved, who rested on Yeshua's breast at the Last Supper. In Isaiah 46, 9-10, it says, Remember the former events of old, for I am El, and there is no one else, Elohim, and there is no one like me, declaring the end from the beginning and from of old, that which has not yet been done, saying, My counsel does stand, and all my delight I do. So everything that we read in the book of Isaiah, everything that we read in Zechariah, all of the prophets, everything in the book of Revelation, every prophecy that's in Scripture, his counsel does stand, and that is exactly what he will do. Isaiah 45:23 says, I have sworn by myself, a word has gone out of my mouth in righteousness, and shall not return, so that to me every knee shall bow, every tongue swear, be it Israel or be it the nations in the kingdom, all will come giving praises to Yehovah. So now, finally, I'll give you the summary of the 3 parts of the Life After Death teaching. Life After Death Part 1 summary. There are two deaths to which we can be subject: the physical death, which is the first death, and the second death in the lake of fire. We are all subject to the first death because we have all sinned. There are two fates for all mankind when they are judged: eternal life and eternal destruction in the pit, the deep, the sea, the abyss, the bottomless pit, the lake of fire, Gehenna, whichever term you want to use to refer to it. Some have been ransomed from the second death by Yeshua's atoning death. In order to be deemed righteous in Yehovah's sight and to be raised to eternal life, one must repent and be cleansed by Yeshua's blood. That was the ransom that was paid for us. Life After Death Part 2 summary. Yeshua's soul went to paradise in Sheol when he died, just as ours will, where he preached the gospel to those who had died before Torah was given. He was resurrected to life after 3 days, just as we will be resurrected at the time appointed for us. Sheol is a place where the soul is conscious, waiting for resurrection, or being thrown into the lake of fire. Some are comforted, like Lazarus. Some are tormented, like the rich man. Ultimately, we will sleep with our fathers. The wicked do not burn in agony forever, but suffer eternal destruction in unquenchable fire in the pit, the deep, the sea, the abyss, the bottomless pit, the lake of fire, Gehenna. Life After Death Part 3 summary. There will be two resurrections of the dead. Sometimes people get confused that people were resurrected after Yeshua's resurrection, as if that is part of the resurrection of the dead. It is not. Those people were resurrected just like Lazarus was resurrected. All the people Elijah resurrected, those people were resurrected to life and would have died again afterwards. That one was not one of the resurrections of the dead. They will be raised in one of the two ultimately. The righteous from the nations and from the nation, Yisrael, will inherit the kingdom. The wicked will be cast into the lake of fire and suffer the second death. All people will be judged by their works, and faith will be accounted as righteousness to those who have repented and believed. His people will be a light to the nations in the kingdom. Eye has not seen and ear has not heard, nor have entered into the heart of man what Elohim has prepared for those who love him. And ultimately, there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth among those who will miss out.